Imagine if Lamborghini actually released these rare cars that I'm about to show you. How different would their brand look today? There was an era when their ideas felt untouchable, sometimes impossible, and completely unfiltered. There was a moment when these cars weren't just ideas, they were real, they were running, and they were one decision away from hitting the road. These are 10 rare cars Lamborghini actually built, but never released. Starting off the list, the Lamborghini Marzal. In 1967, Lamborghini unveiled a car that completely broke away from anything they had built before. The Lamborghini Marzal marked a shift in how the company approached design. At a time when Lamborghini was still defining its identity, the Marzal offered a bold alternative to the two-seater sports cars the company was becoming known for. The car was built as a true four-seater, something that was almost unheard of for a brand focused on performance and design over practicality. What made it even more striking was the glass. Nearly the entire upper half of the car was transparent. The gull-wing doors were made of glass from top to bottom, and the rear window wrapped all the way around, giving the car an open, airy feel that no other Lamborghini had ever attempted. Inside, the theme continued. The seats and dashboard were finished in a soft silver upholstery, matching the futuristic tone of the car's exterior. Everything felt like it belonged in a concept for a new era, not a road car from the 1960s. Even the engine followed this philosophy. Instead of using one of Lamborghini's V12s, they fitted the Marzal with a 2-liter inline-six derived from half of the Miura's V12, reinforcing that this car wasn't about performance, it was about design language and possibility. Although it never went into production, the Marzal left a lasting impression. It would go on to influence the Espada, Lamborghini's first real four-seater Grand Tourer. And while the Marzal itself never made it to the road, it played a quiet but important role in showing that Lamborghini was never afraid to imagine something completely different. Next on the list, the Lamborghini Bravo. By 1974, Lamborghini was in the middle of a design revolution. The Miura had already made history, and the Countach was pushing boundaries. But there was still room to explore what a smaller, more accessible Lamborghini might look like. That was the thinking behind the Lamborghini Bravo, a compact concept developed by Bertone as a possible replacement for the Urraco. The Bravo was built on a shortened version of the Urraco chassis and powered by the same 3-liter V8 engine, but everything else about it felt sharper and more focused. The body was low and wide, with tight proportions and a clean wedge profile that captured the angular spirit of the era. It carried a very different energy compared to the Countach. It was more compact, more refined, and arguably more realistic, but still unmistakably Lamborghini. The design was led by Marcello Gandini, who was already well known for his work on the Miura and the Countach. With the Bravo, he introduced details that would later appear on production models, like the square headlight clusters, deep side intakes, and flat glass surfaces. Even the wheel design had a geometric pattern that echoed the visual language of Lamborghini's next generation. Although the car underwent extensive testing and logged thousands of miles, it was never put into production. The timing simply didn't align. Lamborghini was facing financial difficulties, and there wasn't enough momentum to bring a new model to market in that segment. But despite that, the Bravo made its mark. It served as a design bridge between the Urraco and the Countach, capturing a moment when Lamborghini was refining its identity without losing its edge. Coming up next is the Lamborghini Athon. In 1980, Lamborghini was in a difficult place financially. Production had slowed down, and the future of the company was uncertain. But at that same moment, Bertone stepped forward with a concept that reminded everyone just how forward-thinking Lamborghini design could be. The Athon was a low, angular roadster that followed the wedge design philosophy popular in the 1970s. But it took that shape and gave it a new kind of presence. The bodywork was blocky, but clean, with a flat rear deck, a sharply defined front end, and a compact, open top layout that gave it the feeling of a technical sculpture rather than a traditional car. The driver and passenger sat low inside the cabin, surrounded by a futuristic dash made up of digital gauges, soft leather, and squared-off surfaces that felt closer to an aircraft cockpit than a sports car. Underneath, it was built on the mechanicals of the Lamborghini silhouette, using the same 3-liter V8 mounted just behind the driver. It wasn't built for performance testing, but it was fully functional and capable of being driven. That level of detail helped the Athon stand apart from many other concept cars of the era that were purely static display pieces. The name came from Egyptian mythology, referring to the sun god Aton, and it fit the car's personality. The Athon felt like a vision of a convertible from a future that never happened. It was sleek, expressive, and carried just enough of Lamborghini's character to feel grounded in the brand without being tied to tradition. Even though it remained a one-off, the Athon showed how Lamborghini could look toward the future, even during some of its most uncertain years. Next up is the Lamborghini Portofino. In 1987, Lamborghini was under Chrysler's ownership, and that opened the door to some unusual ideas. One of the most surprising results of that period was the Lamborghini Portofino. It was a sleek 4-door concept car that blurred the lines between a luxury sedan and a futuristic supercar. It was designed not in Italy, but in Detroit, at Chrysler's own design center, and it reflected a very different take on what a Lamborghini could be. The Portofino was built on a stretched Jalpa platform and featured a version of Lamborghini's V8 engine mounted in the rear. But what made the car truly unique was the body. The design was a bold mix of sharp lines and flowing curves with a wedge-like profile that carried over some of the drama seen in earlier Lamborghini concepts. The most distinctive element was its door setup. The car featured 4 scissor doors opening upward in a butterfly motion, something that had never been seen before in a sedan. Inside, the cabin was forward-thinking, with wide digital displays, sculpted seats, and a clean, minimalist layout. It felt more like the interior of a high-end coupe than a traditional 4-door. The goal was to create something that had the comfort and practicality of a luxury saloon, while still keeping the spirit of a Lamborghini alive in both form and performance. Although the Portofino wore the Lamborghini badge, it was just as much a Chrysler concept as it was an Italian one. It was shown off as a design statement and never seriously considered for production, but it didn't vanish without a trace. The styling of the Portofino would go on to influence several Chrysler production cars in the early 1990s, including the Dodge Intrepid and the Chrysler Concorde, both of which borrowed elements from its silhouette and interior layout. Next on the list is a car that showed how far designers were willing to push the boundaries of what a Lamborghini could be. It was called the Bertone Genesis. Revealed at the 1988 Geneva Motor Show, the Genesis was built around a 5.2-liter V12 taken directly from the Countach Quattrovalvole. It was mounted in the front and paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission sourced from Chrysler. The idea was to create something that could offer the power and prestige of a supercar while also delivering space and comfort like a luxury van. It wasn't a sports car, and it wasn't a luxury limousine. It was something completely in between. The exterior was styled with Bertone's signature angular language. The proportions were unusual, with a steeply sloped front windshield and a short, upright rear. The large glass house and forward-leaning stance gave it a futuristic profile, while the massive air vents and wide body reminded you that this was still hiding a Lamborghini heart underneath. Inside, the Genesis was just as unconventional. It featured a fully digital dashboard, plush leather seating, and a high-tech layout that felt more like a mobile lounge than a family vehicle. The seating was arranged to maximize interior space and comfort, with the emphasis placed on a luxurious experience for all 5 passengers. Of course, the Genesis was never meant for mass production. It was a bold statement, a design exercise that asked what would happen if Lamborghini performance was combined with everyday usability. Although the idea seemed outrageous at the time, it foreshadowed something that would happen decades later, the birth of the Lamborghini Urus, a high-performance family vehicle that carried the same DNA into a very different form. Coming up next is the Lamborghini P140. By the late 1980s, Lamborghini was searching for a way to expand its lineup. The Countach was reaching the end of its life, and the entry-level Jalpa had already been phased out. That left a gap in the range, and the P140 was created to fill it. This was Lamborghini's attempt to design a more accessible V10-powered model that could bring in a new generation of customers. While still staying true to the brand's bold identity, the P140 was built around an all-new 4-liter V10 engine, making it one of the first serious attempts by Lamborghini to move beyond their traditional V12 platform. The engine was compact, lightweight, and designed for mid-mounted use, and it was paired with a clean, modern body designed once again by Marcello Gandini. His styling for the P140 kept the sharp lines and low profile that defined Lamborghini's image, but softened some of the more extreme angles to create something that felt a little more refined. Inside, the car focused on visibility and comfort. The cabin was wide and airy compared to the Countach, with larger glass areas and more usable space. The P140 was meant to feel like a Lamborghini that you could drive every day without sacrificing too much of the brand's dramatic character. Several prototypes were built and tested, including both running models and design studies. The engineering was advanced for the time and development was moving steadily forward. But then, the company changed hands. When Chrysler sold Lamborghini in the early 1990s, priorities shifted and the P140 was put on hold. Eventually the entire project was canceled. Not because it failed, but because it no longer fit the direction the new owners wanted to take. Still, the work done on the P140 didn't disappear. The V10 engine and some of the design principles behind it would eventually feed into what became the Gallardo, almost a decade later. Next up is the Lamborghini Calà. In 1995, Lamborghini was once again searching for a way to introduce a more accessible entry-level model. At the Geneva Motor Show that year, Ital Design unveiled their answer to that question, a sleek, lightweight targa top called the Lamborghini Calà. Designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro, it was one of the cleanest and most refined concept cars Lamborghini had ever shown, and it came remarkably close to being production-ready. The Calà was powered by a naturally aspirated 4-liter V10 engine, a unit that was completely new for Lamborghini at the time. The engine was mounted in the middle, paired with a 6-speed manual gearbox, and together they gave the car a balance and performance that made it feel nimble and modern. It was designed from the ground up to be usable, drivable, and comfortable, without losing the bold presence that a Lamborghini was expected to deliver. The design itself was elegant and smooth, gone were the extreme angles and aggressive vents seen on earlier concepts. In their place were long curves, flush surfaces, and well-integrated features. The removable targa roof added practicality, and the proportions felt just right for a smaller, lighter supercar. Inside, the cabin was designed with simplicity in mind. A clean dash layout, supportive leather seats, and just enough visual flair to keep it in line with the brand's identity. The Calà was built with real intent. Lamborghini saw it as a potential replacement for the discontinued Jalpa, and development was well underway. But not long after the car was shown, Lamborghini was sold to the Volkswagen Group through Audi. With the change in ownership came a change in direction. The Calà was quietly shelved, and its platform was reworked and reimagined into what would eventually become the Gallardo several years later. Next on this list is a prototype called the Zagato Raptor. In 1996, at the Geneva Motor Show, Zagato unveiled a concept that looked like it was ready to hit the track the moment it left the stand. The Raptor was built in collaboration with Lamborghini as a radical reinterpretation of the Diablo. However, it was a fully functional prototype designed to explore the idea of a lightweight, high-performance Lamborghini stripped down to its core. The Raptor was based on the all-wheel drive Diablo 5T, but it had been reworked to be lighter and more focused. It kept the same 6-liter V12 engine, but the anti-lock braking system and traction control were removed to save weight and increase driver engagement. The body panels were made from carbon fiber, which allowed the car to shed hundreds of kilograms, improving both speed and agility without touching the powertrain. Visually, the car was unmistakable. The Raptor featured Zagato's signature double-bubble roof and a striking canopy door system that combined the roof and windshield into a single piece, which lifted up and forward to allow access to the cabin. It gave the car a futuristic and mechanical feel, but it also served a practical purpose, making the doors lighter and reducing structural complexity. The lines were clean and aggressive, with deep side intakes, a wide stance, and minimal ornamentation. Everything was shaped for performance. Inside, the cabin was minimal and focused. The controls were simple, the seating position was low and purposeful, and the materials were chosen for lightness rather than luxury. Despite the excitement it generated, the Raptor never made it past the prototype stage. There were discussions about limited production, and even some speculation that it could become a track-focused version of the Diablo, but the project never moved forward. Still, the car left its mark as one of the most ambitious and performance-driven concept collaborations between Zagato and Lamborghini. It showed how, even at the height of the supercar era, Lamborghini was still willing to take creative risks with partners who shared their obsession with bold ideas. Next up is the Lamborghini Pregunta. In 1998, just before Lamborghini was officially brought under Audi's control, a final independent concept emerged that felt like a closing chapter for the brand's wilder, less restrained past. Built not in Italy, but in France, the Lamborghini Pregunta was based on the Diablo, but the way it was presented made it feel like something far more experimental, a machine shaped by aerospace ideas rather than traditional automotive design. The Pregunta started life as a Diablo 5T, carrying the same naturally aspirated 5.7-liter V12 engine that produced over 500 horsepower, but from there, almost everything was reimagined. The body was constructed using advanced materials, including carbon fiber and aerospace-grade composites, and the styling reflected that origin. The car was low and wide, but it had a flowing, almost organic form, with deep venting, integrated headlight covers, and a rear end that looked more like a fighter jet than a road car. Inside, the aviation theme continued. The dashboard was filled with digital readouts and military-style switchgear. The steering wheel and instrumentation felt closer to the cockpit of an aircraft than the cabin of a traditional supercar. Even the paint was borrowed from aerospace, a matte gray finish that had been developed for radar-absorbent applications. However, it arrived at an awkward moment. By the time the concept had been completed, Lamborghini was already in the process of being acquired by Audi, and that shift brought with it a new focus on refinement, consistency, and long-term planning. The Pregunta was never shown again in any official capacity, and it remained a one-off. It was sold into private hands, but its legacy still lingers as one of the most unconventional and aggressive designs ever to wear the Lamborghini name. It captured the final sparks of a more chaotic, experimental era just before everything changed. Rounding up the list is the Lamborghini P147 Canto. By the late 1990s, Lamborghini was preparing to retire the Diablo, which had carried the brand through most of the decade. The company needed a new flagship, and development began on a successor under the internal name P147, later called the Canto. It was one of Lamborghini's last major projects before Audi took full control, and it came remarkably close to entering production. The Canto was powered by a naturally aspirated 6-liter V12 engine that produced around 600 horsepower. It was intended to be more powerful, more refined, and easier to live with than the Diablo, which was known for its raw, aggressive nature. The goal was to bring Lamborghini into a new era with a car that could compete against the latest offerings from Ferrari and McLaren, while still keeping the brand's character intact. The design was handled by Zagato, and it took a different approach from Lamborghini's previous models. The body featured flowing lines, smooth surfaces, and large rear air intakes that were shaped almost like gills. It was a dramatic car, but not in the angular, geometric way the Countach or Diablo had been. It felt softer, more sculpted, and that was part of the problem. When Audi acquired Lamborghini, the Canto was already in its final design stages. But when the prototype was presented to Audi executives, they weren't convinced. The styling didn't quite align with their vision for Lamborghini's future. It lacked the visual impact they believed the brand needed to reestablish itself on the global stage. The project was quietly shelved, and work began on a completely new car instead. That decision led to the creation of the Murcielago, which launched in 2001 and marked the beginning of Lamborghini's modern era. As for the Canto, only a handful of prototypes were built, and most were never shown to the public. It remains one of the most developed Lamborghini concepts never to reach production, a car that almost became the face of a new generation, but ultimately ended up as a forgotten chapter in the company's evolution. So what do you think of these cars? Do you think that Lamborghini should have released any of them? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe and check out these 10 rare cars that Ferrari built but never released by clicking on the video on the screen.